things like that happen a lot after everybody else has left. And so if I kind of have a heads up that maybe there's people who know each other on the teams or somebody's there, I will stick around because that stuff is stuff that I love.
I see your work on just your social media platforms, and your work's been featured on several basketball magazines. How did that journey start out for you?
It's not typical and very different, I think, than probably a lot of people. Like I said, I always loved the game. I always wanted to be around it. And when I went to college not really knowing fully what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to be around sports. So I majored in kinesiology. I ended up leaving college and, short version, ended up in a really toxic, abusive relationship and didn't really know what I was going to do, didn't really have direction, but I had always been really interested in photography. I always really wanted to do that. And at the time, he bought me a camera with a credit card that he took out in my name that I didn't know about, and basically
Oh
said,
man.
"Hey, here's a camera. You're never going to do anything with it." And
Wow.
we ended up, thankfully, I got out of that situation, but I was very much not in a good place. I really didn't have, he'd alienated me from my life, from my hobbies, from my friends, from everything. And I took that camera and just poured everything I had into it. And I built that into a very successful wedding photography career. And I shot weddings for years. I eventually moved on, got married, had children, and I continued. When I started having kids, I kind of took a step back from it. Our marriage didn't last, sadly, and I found myself as a single parent to three little kids, and I still was kind of, again, lost and didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I still love photography. I just didn't really want to be in the wedding industry. This is a long story, I'm sorry. I
No, no
found
worries. Go
a,
ahead.
I was on some like fan sites for the Trailblazers on like Facebook and things like that. And one day, there was a fan site that had posted something saying, "We're looking for writers." And I thought, well, I love to write and I love the Trailblazers. This would be fun. Like, I didn't think of doing it as a job, but just for fun. And so I messaged them and said, "I don't have any history here. Like, I don't have any background here, but I love the team. And I do have a background in writing." And so I sent them some samples and they were like, "Yeah, come write for us." So I started writing for, at the time it was Blazer Gang. I wrote for them. And then someone from Blazers Edge, which is the SB Nation site, ended up reaching out to me. In the process of covering the team that way, writing for them, I happened to be in a 24-hour fitness, and I was done with my workout and I went into the gym and I was shooting baskets, which is kind of my reward for getting through the workout. And there were a couple guys at the end of the court playing basketball, and I could see that they actually weren't playing, they were just putting up shots. And I could see that they were really, really good, like past the point of a normal person playing. And I kind of found myself watching them and not playing anymore. And I'm not really a friendly person at the gym. I kind of just do my thing. But I ended up saying when they stopped, like, "Hey, do you play somewhere?" And it turned out that it was Anthony Goods, who is a co-founder of Swish Cultures, which is a basketball media company. And we got to talking. He found out I was a writer in our conversation, and they were looking for some people to write. So I sent him some articles. He got on a plane to go overseas. He was a professional player at the time, and play basketball. And within the next couple weeks, he realized that I was also a photographer. And he said, "Hey, have you ever shot basketball?" And I said, "Nope." And he said, "Would you want to?" And I said, "Yep." And he sent me to a G League game, and with Swish Cultures credentialing me, and I went and shot the South Bay Lakers. And I was so inexperienced with shooting basketball that someone had to come tell me that I actually had to sit down at the end of the court. I couldn't be standing up because I didn't know any better. And I shot that game, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. And I worked with Anthony, I worked with Swish Cultures, and I just started taking every opportunity I could. And very quickly, that was in January of 2020. So that was only 3 years ago. And just very quickly, Thankfully through Anthony, just was able to build some relationships with people, started shooting for Josh Childress, who's a retired basketball player. I shoot all of his stuff. Then eventually met Chene Ogumake and Neka Ogumake. I shoot for them. That led to me shooting in studio for NBA Today, for ESPN. So I've just kind of very quickly moved from a photographer who shot weddings and was kind of unsure of my direction to being now in a position where I get to shoot the people that sometimes that I grew up watching, and the people who I, love to watch play now. So it's been a ride, not typical, but it worked out. So.
Wow, incredible story, Dia. And I have to ask, I'm being sincere here. Do you think that like wedding reception photography like transferred over well to like live sport?
It's funny we talk about this. My mom and I have talked about this several times, and I really think that being a wedding photographer and shooting portraits and weddings and live events where you got one chance with a wedding, like you miss it, it's done. And having that training, having the ability to, work under pressure, make sure you don't miss things. I, as a wedding photographer, was very focused on the emotion that was going on around me and capturing those kind of candid things that were happening. And I feel like for me, that's translated a lot to basketball. And while I love a good action shot, almost every time my favorite shots are the things that are going on the sidelines, the things that are going on in between, the things that are going on when the whistle blows. And I feel like that, and I'm not saying, there are people who do these things a lot as well, but for me, I think because that's my background, I think that has actually translated really well. And it's put me in a position where with games, I kind of see things differently, and also with other things too. When I'm shooting for the show, a lot of the things are not necessarily just like I shoot when they're recording, but as soon as the camera stops and they go to commercial break, that's my favorite time to shoot because it's all the in-between stuff. And I think that history in weddings where you really have to pay attention to that stuff has definitely played a part in why I'm able to do what I do, for sure.
What is your process like when you get to the arena? I'm a nerd for just kind of the technical details. So,
Yeah.
well, like, what kind of camera do you use? What is kind of if you walk us through a typical day, like
Okay.
you're assigned a game, like what is kind of what's that whole routine like for you? And what have you learned from when you first entered your first game you shot to now? Like, what are kind of the lessons you've carried over since that from your beginning?
Okay. Well, first of all, sit down. you can't stand at the end of the court. I shoot Sony. I used to shoot Canon. Canon is what I shot when I was shooting weddings, and then I actually went to Puerto Rico to shoot for FIBA. It was when COVID was still kind of going on, and so we were in a bubble. And I was down there for 2 weeks shooting for FIBA, and I came back. And when I came back, literally on my way back, I stopped to go in somewhere, and my car was broken into, and all my equipment was stolen. So I was left with nothing and kind of having to reevaluate. And I wasn't shooting weddings anymore, so I had to kind of look at, okay, what's going to work best for me with what I'm doing. Ended up switching to Sony. I shoot mirrorless. I shoot at A7 III, which is fantastic. It's fast. It's light. It's easy. I love it. So I shoot with that. I shoot largely, probably 80 to 90% when I'm shooting a game, I'm shooting with a 70 to 200 lens, which is, if you're not a photographer, you aren't familiar with this, it's a zoom lens. So you get a focal length from 70 millimeters to 200, which basically it means that I can shoot wide enough that I can shoot the guys sitting on the bench next to me, or coming in, playing on the half of the court that I'm on, but it zooms far enough that I can also get the action on the other side pretty decently. So that's, if I'm on the court, if I'm shooting on the court, that's what I'm shooting with. If I'm shooting up farther, I really like, there's a lens that goes up to 400, and that's a dream to shoot with when you're higher up, because you can kind of get in on the action. And I tend to really love those close up because you get the emotion. But it's a lot. It's a pretty laid back environment for me. If I'm going into a game, you go through security, you get your credentials, you go down kind of into the back of the kind of where you see the players come in. It's kind of the same area, and out on the court. Usually I'm there about an hour and a half before the game starts, before fans come in. Teams are warming up, so you can kind of go down and shoot whatever they're warming up if you want to shoot that. The teams I shoot a lot of G League, and the G League teams, the Clippers and the Lakers G League teams are where I'm at. And because I've shot them enough, I kind of have gotten to know those guys. So, if they're not playing, sometimes I'll get to kind of talk to them and see what's going on with them, where they're at. And they warm up, they get focused, they get ready for the game. You shoot some of that stuff, and then the game starts. And so every place is different. Some places have an assigned lane. If you look at the baseline of a basketball court, you can see little boxes, and that's where like the TV cameras and things like that. And as a photographer, you're either assigned one of those, or you have a spot up higher where like the media people are. And so it just kind of depends on where you're shooting. But if you're like, when I shoot for the Clippers G League, they're very relaxed. Like, you can kind of get up and move and go where you want to go. When I shoot for the Lakers G League, I stay in my box. So it just kind of depends on the team and their rules. There's always someone there who can kind of answer questions if it's the first time I've shot somewhere. And then I just shoot the game, and I shoot, whatever's going on, whatever I see. I do, like I said, a lot of the stuff that's going on the side, the timeouts, the halftime when they're kind of interacting with each other, warming up again, stuff like that. That kind of stuff is always my favorite. And especially the end of the game. I love the end of the game because you kind of get to see the players interacting with each other, and they have friends on the other teams and things like that. And I love that. And then I usually end up hanging around a long time after the game, because that's when you get a lot of that kind of in between stuff. I've had some really cool opportunities for things that have happened like that. I was shooting the G League, the South Bay, and Scottie Pippen's son, Scottie Pippen Jr., is playing for them. And so there was one game where I hung around, and his dad was there, Scottie Pippen was there, and they had family there. And because I hung around, I was able to get them kind of interacting and the family hanging out and things like that. And so things like that happen a lot after everybody else has left. And so if I kind of have a heads up that maybe there's people who know each other on the teams, or somebody's there, I will stick around, because that stuff is stuff that I love. And then I just pack up, head out. I usually will edit, upload, post on social media, and then send them to the players and things like that. So it's all pretty quick turnaround, because then it's on to the next game very quickly after that.